Welcome everyone here to First Unitarian Church of Honolulu's weekly Pau Hana. This is a time when we gather to learn more about things going on around us, things going on in the church, things going on in life and what have you. And today we're really exceedingly happy to have with us one of my friends and really wonderful allies around Honolulu for justice work and for other aspects of having a good life. And so I'm very happy to welcome Reina Purvis. Hi, Reina. How are you?
Well, TJ, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well. Just to let you know some of the format and to remind folks, if you have questions, you can send them to me on direct message during that's one way during the talk. If typing or something like that is really not your way of communicating, you can always just wave your hand and ask something or just speak out if that's just what you need to do. So I want to encourage all forms of participation and information gathering that are amenable to everyone's way of doing that. So that's what we'll do. And so Reina, one of the things I like to start with in our Pau Hanas is the question, who are you and what do you do? So that everyone can learn. Hi.
Thank you. That's a great question. And thank you for the opportunity to be with you all tonight. I've been looking forward to this ever since Reverend TJ sent me the email invitation. And it was like, yes, this is something to enjoy. So thank you for your time this evening. It's late in my day, so if my voice gets a little raspy, please forgive me. So I am currently serving as the executive director down at down the valley from many of you at the Nuuanu YMCA at Vineyard and Poly. And I've been here coming up on 4 years this summer and really excited to have gotten here before the pandemic and had the opportunity to work with our team and with our members and continue the work of the Y and also to move the Y in some different directions as a result of some of our experience during the pandemic. So we're excited about what that can bring. A little bit deeper background is that I grew up in Florida. I've lived in Kentucky and Pennsylvania and Korea and back in Florida and Texas and in Hong Kong, and now I'm in Hawaii. So at one point, when we were in Pennsylvania and the kids were little, it had been a lot of cold winters. Northeastern PA gets a lot of snow. And my wife said, we're going somewhere warm. And we've stayed pretty much in a warmer climate ever since. And Hawaii is just perfect in terms of weather. So it's good to find our way here on our journey. My wife currently lives in Korea. She grew up there, the daughter of missionaries, and has gone back and works at an international school there. And we have adult children, both of whom are married. And one of those lives in Hong Kong with his wife, and our daughter lives in England with her husband. And that's kind of a synopsis of our arc at arriving in the Nuuanu Valley. So it's a pleasure again to just be with you all this evening, and I look forward to our conversation. So thank you.
And it also completed your family plan to take over the world, to have outposts all over the globe. So I didn't want to give away your family's plan, but congratulations on world domination. I'm happy for you. So yes. So when I got to started getting emails from you, Reina, and hearing about you from other folks organizing the kinds of events you were at the Nuuanu Y, I have to confess, as a former member of the Nuuanu Y, I was delighted to see the kind of programming starting to come from the YMCA. And we'll get to that in a second, but can you give us a little bit of background about, I don't know, you don't have to go too much into the history, but what is the YMCA's history in Honolulu? And if you want to talk about Nuuanu in particular, I know there's a lot of beautiful clippings and things like that on the walls there. Is there anything you want to say about, maybe briefly, about just sort of the Nuuanu Y's history here in Honolulu?
I would. Thank you. Great intro. So the YMCA has been in Honolulu for the history of the YMCA. We started in 1844 in England, and it spread to about 125, 127 different countries around the world. In the Nuuanu Valley, the YMCA started here in the late 1917, 1918 timeframe. And interesting for me, growing up as a white person in the South who has always looked at folks with different ethnicities, hopefully openly, probably somewhat conditioned by my upbringing, but the history of the Nuuanu Y that beckoned to me is that when the Y started, the leadership of the local community in the Nuuanu area, which included the Filipino community, the Korean community, the Chinese community, the Japanese community, and the Haole community. Those leaders came together and they said, we can be a stronger organization, we can have more impact in our community, we can be better. And to me, that is the simplest way to express the ethos and the drive and the purpose of the Nuuanu Y, is that we are better together. And so what I love about our building, I mean, y'all drive by our building a lot, I'm sure. It's not the most aesthetically appealing structure in Hawaii.
Oh, go on. No.
I have said to some of my colleagues on the mainland that it might be the ugliest YMCA building that I've ever seen. However, that inclusion, that sense of belonging makes what happens on the inside of this Y one of the most magical YMCAs I have ever encountered. And so it might look like a prison. In fact, Magnum PI did a filming here recently, and they literally transformed it into the Waiwa Correctional Facility for their episode. And so even Hollywood recognizes the challenges of our building. We had members that said, can you leave the razor wire on top of the pool wall? It seems to work there, you know. But once they're out and we're back to doing our Y thing, the magic is what happens on the inside. So it's okay to look at the building and look past the walls and look into the hearts of our people, because we truly have some amazing moments that go on in our building.
That's really beautiful. Hearing like what called you there and what beckoned you is interesting. Can you say something about one of those moments, maybe one of your first moments when you realized like, this is the place where I'm supposed to be, you know, or maybe an early, you know, feeling like that you started to see how that was all coalescing for you?
Sure, I'll do my best. Our family had lived in different parts of the world, and my wife's extended family in a lot of those places as well. And so we had gotten into the habit of coming to Hawaii to meet every 4 or 5 years for the holiday season. And we would kind of gather from all the corners of the globe and stay up on the North Shore for a week or two. And so I had gotten to know some people here at this Y who worked for the Y in Honolulu. And I always thought, okay, that's a really interesting mix of peoples and ethnicities and backgrounds. And Hawaii is rich in its diversity. So I always had it in the back of my mind. And then a few years ago, I was part of a small cohort of folks in the National YMCA looking at social equity. And we met and did some academic work, research, wrote some papers, had some symposiums. And in that process, I met my predecessor, Randall Ikeda. Some of you might have known Randall from his time here. And he and I got to be good friends. And he always wanted to work for a Y in the mainland. I always wanted to work for the Y in Honolulu. So when he decided to move to upstate New York, bless him for doing that, and especially with the winters there, he called and said, I'm leaving. If you want this, you need to talk to the folks soon. So I did, and long story short, ended up here. But it was the the diversity of this island, of this place, of this Y, and the sense of connecting. I've got an undergrad in economics, but I also have a master's in counseling, and I'm drawn more to the relational side of our work. And so what I saw here, what I experienced here, the way that this Y approaches its community and each other is one of building relationships. And that does beckon me, TJ, is any chance to get to know others at a personal level, to find ways to serve, to find ways to belong, to find ways to build community. And it's that relationship that our urge for relationship that drives me.
That's wonderful. Thanks. Yeah, I kind of want to get to some of the things that I've seen lately that have kind of stood out as real leadership in our community. I think one in particular was I guess I would describe it as an all gender pool night or all gender inclusive pool night. And it just sounded lovely. It's the first time I've really seen something like that here. And it did strike me, the living in a place that one of the things that struck me here to be just so blunt is how few clothes people wear in Honolulu. Like here, coming to like a meeting on a weekend and someone not wearing a shirt is not uncommon on Zoom or something like that. And so there just are less clothes than anywhere else I've ever lived. And it struck me the indignity of people feeling badly about their body or their physical expression in a place where it seems to be such a privilege to just walk around however one expresses their gender physically. And so that I know I'm kind of getting into my own thoughts here, but can you say something about the pool party and explain a little to folks what it is and how it came about and how that's going?
Absolutely. I can't say that it was just our idea. I have a colleague who works with the Y in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and she is a married gay woman, and she and her Y team came up with the idea of a transgender swim night. And so I spent some time talking with Tony Kayumi, and we decided we were going to try to do something like it. We wanted to do it back in August, but we were still under some constraints around COVID. And fortunately, the lifting of the mask and vaccines and everything coincided perfectly with the timing for the event this spring. So just a couple of Saturdays ago, we hosted transgender, non-binary, and Mahu swim night at the YMCA. First time we've ever done anything like that. And we just simply said, wear swimwear that is appropriate for your gender, and left it at that. It is open for each individual to attire themselves as they are comfortable. What we were hoping to do was to create a space where everyone is welcome. There's no pressure, there's no judgment, there's no expectation. It is come and be truly yourself. And we had about 25 folks, which was a surprising number for us. Plus, we had some members of a group that we call the Rainbow Connection, which are folks from different organizations here in town. And we had several of our YMCA social work interns who helped us out. And so altogether, there were about 33, 35 of us here at the Y on a Saturday evening. And we had episodes of Pose, the TV show, on the screen. You could float in the pool and watch the TV on the screen and chit chat with people. And what we found was that we had a lot of individuals who came as individuals and walked out in twos and threes. And folks who are much more adept at social media than I am, more like my daughter, were exchanging all their Instagram and all of their various social media handles and hashtags and everything else. And they were bonding. They were finding friends. They were realizing that they're not alone in their journey in life. And so we were thrilled to see all of this happening. We had folks of all ages. We even had two folks who found out about us on social media. They were visiting from Chicago and they came to the swim night. And so we had a lot of fun with this. We had pizza and snacks and beverages and all of those things. And it was a great night. In fact, folks did not want to leave. And the really cool thing is that we kind of did an informal poll as folks were leaving and said, well, what's next? And they're all like, let's do something else. Let's do something else. And so we're actually planning another event. So on April 30th, we're hosting a game night here at the Y. We won't involve the pool this time, but they'll be able to come upstairs to our youth department and find themselves in another safe space. And we're hoping to have even more folks that will come and just, again, enjoy that togetherness.
That's really beautiful. Congratulations and thank you for doing that. I sort of want to follow up on one thing. I have sort of two questions to follow up on, but one of them is, can you say something about how you feel our youngest among us, sort of the young people you're meeting, are doing coming out of the pandemic? Like hearing that story, like how are they doing, and what is it that they're searching for? Can you say, I mean, it sounded like connection, it sounded like friendship, and meeting that, but as a organization that doesn't have that many people in that age group, if any at all, I'm really just trying to cheat off your homework. Can you say something about setting up these events and how that goes? So
absolutely.
Thank you.
I think that probably you all have seen some of the same data and articles and everything that I have, but it is without a doubt the most challenging mental health experience for our high school students and young adults that I think anyone could have ever imagined, and probably more than they will face for the rest of their lives. I fully believe that every one of us, even those of us on this call, have in one way or another been traumatized through this pandemic experience, whether it be through isolation or loss of a variety of aspects of our lives. And so our youth, middle school, high school students, 18 to 24, 25-year-olds, they're not exempt from this. In fact, I think that the research is starting to demonstrate that this particular age group may be experiencing it more acutely than we realized. Think back, all of us have been 15 or 17 before, and at one point or another, we were isolated. We felt like no one else knew what we were going through. These kids have been forced to go through that, often without the opportunity for socialization, the opportunity for in-person interactions. It's all been behind a mask or on a screen. And that's not a good substitute for what we all need in terms of human belonging. And so the data is suggesting, again, that acute impact on the lives of the youth that form the next generation of our community. So in this event, and as we've seen in some of our other programs, young people are hungry for connection. And it is exacerbated, in my opinion, by our dependency, especially coming out of the pandemic, dependency on the social media. And we've all seen the ups and downs of too much social media and the impact that it can have on one's mental health if someone doesn't like something that you've posted, or if you're being trolled online, or if someone attacks you in another way. And so being able to find that interpersonal where they can sit beside someone and talk and see their face and catch up on the nonverbals and actually develop the interpersonal communication skills is something that is important and will be studied, I'm sure, by the psychologists and social workers for a couple of decades in order to fully understand its impact. In terms of what we hope to accomplish, it's to bring folks together in a way that's healthy, in a way that supports their mental health. It's also, I don't think, probably a surprise to many of you, LGBTQ plus youth struggle with mental health issues, including suicide ideation, at a far greater rate than their peers. And so when you take a marginalized community of youth and you further dampen their opportunity for connectivity, then you start to see even greater rates of mental health challenges. And so we're very much aware. We're doing our best, along with many partners in the community, such as you all, Reverend TJ, and several other organizations, to try to address how can we give kids a place to belong, a sense of community, to hopefully combat some of those mental health issues, and certainly to let them know that they're loved, let them know that they're accepted, that they have a place, and they do not need to, that they're not being forced into considering a lot of other more dire actions.
Yeah, I thank you for that. I'm struck by the what's the word? Not the academic, but the thoughtfulness, and it sounds like the well-researched and well-reasoned approach you're taking. And you mentioned some of the research and the nerding out you did with your colleagues as well. Can you say something about that approach? Like, how much of your work is doing research? And what research are you reading? Is it something coming from National Y, or is it something you do yourself as a trained counselor? Can you just say something about the academic side of your work? Because it's shining through so beautifully, and it's helping like cohere so much of this stuff. I just would love to hear more about your practice there.
I'll do my best. I will not do it justice, I'm sure. I am part of a cohort within the National YMCA movement that looks at issues of diversity and equity and inclusion, as well as a group that is focused on the mental health within YMCAs. And that includes our staff, our members, and especially our young people. So you nailed it, TJ. There are articles and documents and research that a wide variety of people are bringing to bear in this arena of the mental health challenges that we face, and specifically in the areas of LGBTQ+. We have folks in the community that we work with, the Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center, Legacy Foundation, other organizations, Kaiser Permanente from the medical social work field, folks at UH. So there's a lot of synergy or vectors in on this particular community, this particular population of folks. So we learn from each other and we figure out what makes sense. And then the really cool part in my mind is it's all circulated and vetted and bounced back and forth, and where I will misunderstand something, someone else has better knowledge and they bring that in and we bounce it around until we reach a place of understanding and a direction to take in our efforts that I think reflect best practices from counseling, from social work, from maybe theological backgrounds, from a lot of different directions on how to help young people. And that to me is what works best. It's not my idea, it's a consensus of a community of people that are all committed to helping.
Yeah, I think you did it justice. That sounds great. Now, one of the things that also strikes me is, I mean, I had a friend growing up whose mom was a director of a branch of the YMCA in Rochester, New York, in that area, and then moved to California to open a new one. Oh, I see Francine's hand is up. Can I ask this one, or Francine, do you want to follow up on that one?
Okay. No, you go ahead. No, all it's right. Not a follow-up.
So it's sort of a question about, and so I remember his mom moved to open this other one in California, and he was talking about how much work is involved in the amount of money, frankly. And it struck me how large an organization the YMCA really is internationally. And so then I was just kind of thinking, you're doing this work on a national level, and I have been sort of an agitator from the outside, shall you say, in large organizations before. I was the only out gay lawyer of 300 lawyers in a New York law firm. And so it was me and they put me on the diversity committee right away. And we're going to solve this. And so it does make me wonder, how is that group or you, or however you want to talk about, in relation to this really large organization? Is it one of feeling heard? Is it feeling like advocacy? Where can you talk some about that feeling and that relationship?
Yeah, thank you. And your friend experienced kind of what it is. We joke that once you've seen a Y, you've seen one Y, because we're all so different. We're a federated model. So even though we have a national headquarters, every Y that's chartered is different. In fact, a more local illustration is that the YMCA of Honolulu is distinct from the YMCA of Maui and the YMCA of Hawaii and the YMCA of Kauai. So all various Ys with individual charters. So that can be great for YMCAs doing their thing in their community and being very responsive to the needs around them. It can also be a bit of a drag if you're trying to move with alacrity in a new direction as an overall organization. The other challenge that sometimes comes with that is that not every community feels the same about all the issues. So a YMCA that welcomes a transgender person such as myself into a position of leadership in Hawaii can be very different than a YMCA in Birmingham, Alabama, or Jacksonville, Florida, or other places. And so across the country, as we have seen so much lately relative to the red and blue states and the purple tinges and all of those kinds of things on our political and social issue scales, YMCAs reflect some of that. Our boards are made up of volunteers from the communities in which we live. And so whatever you see politically in a community, that's probably going to be a lot of the makeup of our board. It is, I think, appropriate to acknowledge that when I came out to my CEO, they were nothing but supportive. And my board, same thing. I communicated with them on a Zoom call and right at the start of the pandemic, and one of my longtime board members, an attorney here in town, said, "Oh my gosh, I thought you were telling us you were leaving. This is nothing. We've got your back." And so that was one of the most amazing feelings ever. And then my CEO retired or moved on to another opportunity. We hired a new CEO, and he's a married gay man. And so our organization clearly is one where diversity, especially around sexual orientation or gender identity, is open-minded. I have the privilege of supporting our employee resource group for LGBTQ staff. We also have employee resource groups for employees in the Y who identify as either Asian or Pacific Islander in their background, for women, and for young emerging leaders. And collectively, we work to lift up what might be considered marginalized groups in some Ys, yet in our Y, we're celebrated. So each Y is different. We're fortunate, I believe, to be here in Hawaii where we have a diverse community, we have a supportive community, we have an inclusive community, and I believe our Y reflects that. And just for me personally, just being able to live fully into who I am and fully into my work and not having to separate the two in any way, as I've had to in other cities, is a blessing.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you for that, Reina. We'll go to our Chicago contingent over here, who was happy to hear there was some.
Oh, you saw me applauding that, huh?
I did. I see a lot, not all, but I see a lot. Did you have a question? Do you want to join the conversation?
Yes, I would like to ask Reina to talk about the LGBTQ drop-in program for youth, and just to talk a little bit about that, and maybe you could give an update on the status of the in person. Haven't checked in lately with Alicia or Ikaika, and so I'm just wondering how that is going too.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Francine.
Yeah, what a great question. And Francine, thank you for conversations that we've had even prior to tonight in terms of the work that we do here on the island and in our Y. So our goal is to define space at the Y as a safe space for high school and middle school age queer students. And we're intent on that. The rise of Omicron and kind of the struggles and challenges of in-person activity has precluded it for a while. It's been kind of that thing that's hanging out there. When can we start getting back in person? When can we take some of the restrictions off? In the meantime, we started a virtual safe space, and we've got about 24 or 25 young people that are registered for the virtual safe space. Not all of them show up on any given time frame, but we've had folks from neighbor islands. We've had folks from different high schools here in Honolulu or Oahu. We've had folks from Nebraska. We've had folks from Texas. So the outreach in our community is one that continues to spread the word, so to speak. We also benefited, this is kind of a side note out of our experience with the Magnum PI production company. I had the opportunity to bring their set director up and share some of the vision of what we're hoping to do. And before they were leaving, so when they had finished filming, they were tearing down the set the next day, and a truck shows up with furniture out of their warehouse. And so they donated couches and chairs and tables and lamps and dining tables and desks and all manner of things, carpets, all of this. So what we've been able to do is in our second floor lounge area that has all the windows facing Poly Highway and facing the mountains, we've been able to go in there and create a very comfortable, safe space, activity zone. That's also where we have a foosball table and a pool table for youth. So we're creating this safe space, and it looks a lot better now than it would have 2 months ago. And so we're hoping to be able to start the in-person in May, and then build that through the rest of the year. We have a lot of folks who are interested. It will probably do double duty. In fact, I know it will, because we're using that space to host our 18 and older event on the 30th of April. At the YMCA, we're very careful in our programming. So when we're designing a program, age groups matter. And so what we are able to do in our programs for folks 18 and above is different from what we do with folks 17 and younger. So it's all about protecting children. We do not mix adults and minors in the same spaces for those reasons. And so we will have very specific timeframes and activities with our middle school, high school students, and we'll have very specific activities with our 18 and older clientele as well. So we take a lot of pain to make sure that we are protecting everyone as best we can. So
thank you so much, Reina, and thank you so much, Francine, for the question. Where do for your young people in particular, I know I'm cribbing off you again, is it a mix of members, children, and community outreach? Like how are your young people joining? What's kind of the makeup between membership and community members, and how does that look, and what's the reach like?
Oh, I would say probably more than half of our participants are not related to the Y, other than coming to an event like this. Some are members' families. Some are even employees' family members. Some have parents who work for companies here in town or over at UH, different places. So what I love about that is everyone's coming from some different angles, different backgrounds, and still finding that sense of connection. So I can't say that it's one particular avenue that folks find their way to us. It was organic to me. Somehow there's a rightness or at least a feeling of synergy when folks come together that way.
Great. And we've heard about and if there's other events you want to talk about, we can talk about them, and we probably will eventually. But it does raise the question for me: is what else do you do in your role? We've had a fun kind of string of executive directors in different settings, and I'm always kind of curious what their full kind of role really involves. So,
Sure.
Can you say something about that?
Oh, glad to. I have a wonderful staff team, covers our entire operation. So facilities, upkeep, aquatics programs, healthy living, wellness, fitness, a variety of member services. Just recently, last week, we had a wellness fair that included partners on the island, and we had medical screenings, we had antibody screenings, we had vaccinations, all set up in our lobby. And so folks from our membership and the community could all come. So those kinds of member engagement activities. We have a youth department that incorporates multiple A+ after school locations. We're serving about 1,000 young people on any given day across our swath of schools. And we're everywhere from Nuuanu Elementary all the way down the valley and all the way out to Lihiolani over in Kaimuki area. So we've got youth programs in all those directions. And then, typical nonprofit opportunity. We're in the middle of our fundraising campaign right now. We're in the middle of trying to reset in our lobby. We've got some work going around our staff development. And then one of the fun things for me is that I get to be right in the middle of what we call our Jedi work. I'm a Star Wars nerd. I don't try to hide that. And so that stands for justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And so in that realm of responsibility, I get to participate in conversations about pay equity among our staff, to look at how we might have implicit bias among our staff teams in some different directions. I get to work with the leaders of our employee resource groups, again, to lift up these groups that might have historically been marginalized. So I get a wide variety of activity. And at the same time, I interact with my peers across the island, our Metro leadership team upstairs, as we look at both branch specific and association-wide endeavors. And then along with it, I mentioned the Rainbow Connection. I get to work with a wide variety of organizations and people, individuals here on the island, all with a focus on supporting LGBTQ+ youth. So it's quite a bucket or multiple buckets of activity, and a lot of fun until I get behind on something, and then I'm playing catch up. So
yeah, that's taking another hour out of your day, what I'm guessing is the end of your day, is so gracious of you to do for us tonight. Hearing all that, I felt a little bit of guilt.
No. This is fun. I'm enjoying myself. I hope that we have a chance to do some further interactions and Q&A, because I really, really appreciate a chance to be with you all.
Good. I see that Carolyn's got her hand up. Carolyn, why don't you unmute and join the conversation?
Reina, oh, now I'm saying it correctly, I hope. I am much more aware of the Waikiki Health organization. And I wonder if you and they appreciate each other and are in communication and help help support all of our young people?
In a word, yes. They have not joined the Rainbow Connections group yet, but I believe that they are considering it. And they are a very esteemed group serving our community in a lot of different directions. And what's beautiful about how this all comes together is you've got folks like Waikiki Health who are dedicated around multiple direct medical health supports within the community. And they bring a lot of expertise. They bring a lot of focus in areas that we know not of. And so we try to bring people together with folks like Waikiki Health, or as I mentioned, Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction, Kaiser Permanente, other providers to bring those services that are in support of the community. So a lot of respect for Waikiki Health. I think that they are doing some wonderful work, and I think that our work continues to draw us closer. So yes, thank you. And excuse me, thank you for your support for the different nonprofits in the community.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it makes me think a little about meeting people and things like that. I just wonder, for me, it's hard to get, because in my brain, YMCA stands for Young Men's Christian Association. And is that something that is still used, or was YMCA kind of adopted as like did it become so ubiquitous and mean something else? Like, can you just, I'm just kind of curious about where YMCA is in its sort of roots, and where it's kind of moving and that kind of thing as an institution. So.
Question. And yes, it started as Young Men's Christian Association in London a long time ago as a response to the cultural and moral challenges of the Industrial Revolution there in England. Little known trivia fact, the YMCA underwent its largest ever increase in membership in the early 1970s. Can anyone guess why?
They admitted women?
They allowed women to join.
Oh, sorry, I gave it away.
Which is probably a good thing, because in multiple downtown YMCAs around the country, when it was men only, everyone swam in the pool naked. And so while you might have folks in their 50s, 60s, or 70s, and then the children coming in for their swim lessons, and everyone sans swimsuit. That might work in parts of Oahu, but not at the Y. And so we don't do that anymore. But it is a bit of our history.
Someone told me once, I'm sorry to interrupt. Someone told me once that even in that era, when they'd have swim meets, they'd have competitive swim meets and the families would come, but the competitors didn't put on swimsuits to compete. That was just it. I'm here at the swim meet. The people are swimming are naked, and moms and sisters and everyone's there. Anyway, but please. It was
normed. And as we all know, if something is normed, we can get our heads around it.
Yeah.
Anyway, in some parts of the country, as I mentioned, Christianity as an ideology or as a particular religious perspective has more influence than others. We live in a very multicultural, multi-spiritual island and culture, and so it is less so here. We try to create a space that is open to everyone, inclusive of all different spiritual practices, or no spiritual practices. You're all welcome at the YMCA. My background, I grew up in the southern part of the U.S. in a little town in North Florida. I grew up Southern Baptist and even went to a Baptist seminary and pastored as a Baptist. That set up a whole lot of confusion in my brain and a lot of toxicity that probably I still need to see a therapist about from time to time. Yet not every Y is that way. And even in other countries, not every Y is that way. So it comes back to the local community expressing itself through the leadership of the Y, the policies, practices, inclusion practices that they embody. And so it has moved a lot differently from Young Men's Christian Association. However, if you look at our charter, the legal documents that we go by as a 501c3 organization, it will spell out Young Men's Christian Association. That is our legal name. But if you notice everywhere, we rarely spell out YMCA. We use the new logo of the Y. And that new logo came about 10, 12 years ago, caused a lot of consternation because it moved away from YMCA and went to the normative way in which everyone refers to the Y. No one says, I go to the YMCA to work out. They say, I go to the Y. Where did you learn to swim? I learned to swim at the Y. And so the rebranding process is reinforcing that idea that we're just the Y. And it's just an emblem, it's a logo, it's a brand. It has a lot of attached history. And dare I say, some of it colonial history. And so just going to the Y allows us to hopefully reset and maybe work on some rebranding, redefinition of who we are and what our purpose is. But great question.
Great. Yeah, I think I grew up in the sort of YMCA era, not just dancing to the song, but, and so the rebranding definitely is noticed, partly because it kind of looks like a chalice, guys. It's sort of like a Y that goes like this. Anyway, it's like a sideways.
No, I've thought a couple of times about finding, other than it being a brand infringement, would be to create wine glasses in that shape and be able to offer them at our YMCA. So, well,
most companies have never met a licensing agreement they haven't liked. So you might find a possible client there. Let me know if you need some help with that. Are there? We often turn to the questions of, what can we do for you? What's coming up? But I want to just open the floor for a second if anyone has any other follow-up questions. But if not, I see Nancy Young's hand is up. Nancy, do you want to join the conversation? There you go. All right.
My question, my husband and I were active at the Kalihi Y when we went to yoga twice a week. And I don't think anything like that has started back up again at our Y. I know they have the children's programs going. Do you have yoga programs and so on happening?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes, we do, Nancy. Thank you for the question. We're slowly building back our activities, classes for folks of all ages. We're also, and I can send this information to Reverend TJ, we're also, we got some funding through the city to offer a feeding lunch program for Kapuna in our community as well. And we're doing that at various sites around the city and across the island. But we definitely have yoga classes. And there's even a way to access some of those if you want to live stream those. Stay at home and do your yoga at home and watch it on your screen. There's mechanisms to do that as well. We've gotten quite proficient in the pandemic at being able to share our group exercise to a broader audience. But we would love to have you back in the Y, Nancy. If you all want to come down and check it out, we can give you a walk around and talk about the yoga and the group X classes and anything else that you might be interested in. So,
thank you.
Just be careful. There's a high intensity interval training. I don't know the word, master at the Nu'uanu Y, who lulls you into a sense that, oh, it's just fine. You can handle it. It's fine. And by the end, the 2-pound weights feel like they're 80 pounds. So I just want to warn you that she's there and to not be surprised if she dupes you into her class. So,
and I stay away from that class. So.
Oh, I never thought a yoga ball would be so heavy in my life by the end. Anyway, Not that I have any personal feelings about that. Please go ahead.
No, you come on back.
All right.
I did want to highlight a couple of things. One of the things that we're working on is that in September, at the end of September, September 30th through October 2nd, and I will, again, TJ, I'll send you information, but we're hosting our very first LGBTQ plus family camp up at Camp Erdman on the North Shore. If you've been out toward Cayena Point, you've driven right through the middle of Camp Erdman. You may have attended at some point for a different program or so, but we're really excited. So Queer Camp 2022, here we come. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have activities for Kiki, for youth, and for the families and adults that come as well. And so we're thick in the middle of making some plans for the family camp at the end of September. And then we're hoping on the April 30th event to do a little dinner with our attendees. We're thinking about either something like a Thai curry night or something like that, that folks might come and enjoy dinner. So if you all are looking for something to do on Saturday evening, the 30th of April, I would appreciate any help that might come our way. But just know that it's a community outreach activity, and we celebrate our broader community. And whether you identify as LGBTQ plus or as an ally, we want to create a space that everyone belongs to. Our purpose is to create that inclusion for all. And what we come back to often is that bedrock statement, for all. We make no distinction. Everyone is welcome in the Y. If we're going to be inclusive, we're going to be inclusive for all, full stop. And that, to me, the simplicity, the intensity, the power, the impact of that simple statement is something that gets me up in the morning.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And yeah, I know our families will want to know more about the camp, and we'll be happy to learn more. And you know, you mentioned what gets you up in the morning. And one of the things I sometimes like to ask people is like, what in the future would you see as just a big win? Like we did this. Like, is there something you're working toward, or even if it's spiritual or organizational or aspirational, something coming up that you think of as like, this is what I want to see happen, like a vision that would really feel like a win for you? Is there anything like that you can think of?
I think at a 30 or 50,000 foot level, it would. CA is the most welcoming place on earth. And as we think about building a new building, and as we look at what we're hoping to do and all the aspirations that come with it, we want to be the most welcoming, inclusive place on earth. Go on out. I'm a Star Trek or a Star Wars and Star Trek nerd in the universe, in the galaxy. We want folks to understand that this is a place where all belong, all have value, all have a sense of purpose, a sense of opportunity. And we strive towards that every day. And that's the underlying premise. If I reclaim anything from my background, it's that sense of we all. Job is not to suss out one group over another or dictate one way or the other, but that everyone is welcome in our Y.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for this evening. I need a little time to get ready for my next meeting. So if it's okay, we're going to close 5 minutes early. I'm going to let everyone out early, some things to do, and we'll let you go. I hope you don't have any more meetings for the evening, Reina, but if you do, I hope they go very well.
I just want to say how much I have enjoyed meeting you all. I hope I run into you either at the Y or around town, and blessings on your congregation and all of the work that you're doing. Thank you for your allyship. Thank you for your support. And thank you for welcoming me into your time tonight.
All right. Thank you so much, Reina. Have a wonderful evening.
Aloha.